Hello and welcome to another great episode of God-Sized Story. This week, I have a great guest. His name is Aaron Mead.
Hello. Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here. Like Craig said, my name's Aaron Mead. I am the middle school youth pastor at Village Church of Gurnee. Been here with my wife about 5 years now. We have two adorable kids. And we just love being a part of this family and appreciate the time taken today.
All right, so guys, I know you have a really great story for us today. Let you go ahead and get started with that.
Yeah, when Craig asked me to share about stories, I was trying to think of what story in my life to share, what kind of thing would be impactful for others to hear. And then I was on Facebook wasting time, and I saw this video, and it was from The Big Bang Theory. And it was one of the last episodes, and Sheldon Cooper, if you haven't seen it, is this scientist. It's kind of frustrating for most people around him. But throughout these years of the show, I have kind of developed this group of friends. And Sheldon Cooper is a scientist, and he wins an award. And he gets up there and says, you know what, I used to think that awards were just for me and the enjoyment of me celebrating myself. But really, he came to the point, and he says, I came to the point of realizing it's not just me, but this award is for all the people that have been a part of my story. And he invites those people to stand up that have been a part of his story and just talk about the ways that their story impacted his story, and that it was really their award collectively as they impacted his journey and his story. So I'm going to do a little bit of that today, just kind of highlight people that have been a part of my story and how that has impacted me in my life and my journey and my story. So we're going to start off with my dad as a young kid, especially of boys. Many boys are. They look up to their fathers as kind of the example. And my dad was an awesome dad, and he was an orthopedic surgeon. We lived in Michigan at the time. We actually lived in a house on Lake Michigan and enjoyed a very comfortable life. And one day, my dad comes in and says, hey, we're having a family meeting. Everybody sit down at the table. So we sit down. I'm one of four siblings. And we sit down and we realize Dad has a really big announcement. And he says, there's no good way to get into this, so I'm just going to say it. God has called the family to move to Africa. And then we said yes. I'm 8, and the only thing I can think about when my dad says that is Lion King. And I'm pretty excited at that point. But I look around, my siblings are not that excited, but my dad looks back and says, hey, we're Christians. And that's not just a Sunday morning thing, but it's a whole life thing. And the importance of obedience is part of that life and that discipleship. So that my dad's like, we believe God's calling us to do this. And as a Christ follower, we're going to obey and we're going to go. We're going to give up all of our comfortable things in West Michigan, and we're going to go to Kenya, Africa. And he helped start a children's hospital out there. I knew it was shocking, but it was at that point, being so young, that I realized his story impacted my story in the way of now I realize that this Christianity thing isn't just something small or something that doesn't impact my story. It's huge, and it has the ability to send a family all the way across the world. So that was a really big moment in my life and continues to be a part of my story that was really impactful. Second, I'm going to talk about a guy named Glenn Mitchell. Glenn Mitchell is one of those guys that looks really intimidating and scary on the outside, but is very loving and humble and just like an awesome guy on the inside. Actually met Glenn trying to bench press more weight than him because he was in the gym with us, and he's like, I can do way more than that. And we're like, prove it, old man. And sure enough, he did. He beat all of us. So that's how I got to know Glenn, and me and him developed a relationship. He actually became my mentor, and every Thursday I would go up to his house and eat lunch. And really our time focused on what does it mean to be a man of God and godliness. It was interesting to see someone that I kind of like was this picture of like strength and picture of power really sit down with me and talk about love and humility and how important those are to be godly. His story, the time he took out of his story to impact my story, really had a huge impact in the way that I perceived myself and the way that I saw God asking me to live my life. And I was on the basketball team at that time, And I was really kind of that cocky kid that thought I was better than everyone, that we were dominating all of our opponents. And I was like, well, we're awesome. But through Glenn's story, impacting my story, I really saw this command of Christ to be humble and to serve others and to love others. And that really came through his story, and something that I've held on to since then. And finally, the last guy we're going to talk about is Wally Coots. Wally Coots is 6'5" and has the best flat top haircut I've ever seen. Everyone always thinks he's in the military, but he has actually never served. He has 2 sons that do, but he's this awesome guy. And actually, his son and I have grown up together since we were 2 years old. So there's all these pictures of us in diapers together at the local church where Wally was one of the pastors. And it was really awesome. Wally is one of those guys that's been a part of my life for so long that his story has made a huge impact on my story. And it was cool. My family moved to Africa, went to a school there called Rift Valley Academy. And actually, Wally and his family felt the call to move to Africa as well. And he started to be kind of like the campus pastor role at that school about 2 years after we got there. So Wally then became my campus pastor. He became my coach for basketball. He became my teacher for Bible class. And basically any role of influence Wally had in my life. Wally invested in me in being even a part of a leadership class for seniors, my senior year, where he just poured into us the importance of leadership and what does that actually look like. And it's through Wally's story that I really learned that importance of leadership and the importance of empowering young people and empowering them to see where God is working in their lives. So his story is really impactful, so much so that actually my story was altered. And I really at that point saw a desire in me to do what he was doing and to pour into young people, pour into the next generation of people. And so I actually went to his alma mater school and learned about youth ministry and became a youth pastor, and have now been in youth and loving on young people for just about like 8 years now, eight and a half years. And it's just been really cool to see how those men and how their stories and their obedience or their humility or their like desire to empower young people really formed who I am today, and like formed my story and had such a big impact. So that's what I would just encourage people to think about, is like, how can you be a part of other people's stories, and how maybe have you impacted other people's stories, or like maybe there's someone in your life that you need to thank. Be like, you know what, you've impacted my story a lot. Well, that's what I love about stories, is it's not just our own story in our own lane, but really it's like a community. It's a togetherness of the story. And I just think that's such an impactful thing for me to have these guys in my lives that were a part of that. So one of my life verses that actually I love that I've continued to listen to and try to enact in my life is Psalms 27. And it says, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God." And like how vital trust is, no matter where your story goes or what direction your story is in, having that trust is always so important. Thanks for having me, Craig.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for sharing all that. And especially your story really reaches the heart of really what this is about. These stories have really impacted your life. And that's what I want everybody to know, is that all the stories that they're interacting with, all of their stories that they have, change who they are. And they really build us towards being more like Christ. So once again, thank you for joining us. And all of you out there listening, thank you for listening.